All right, we got a lot to get to here today, and everybody knows my favorite show, Starting Lineup, SiriusXM, NBA Radio, Frank Isola, Brian Scalabrine, and we got Isola here with us on this show. Frank, always good to talk to you. I figure, look, we got hot NBA topics between Jimmy Butler's return a couple nights ago, LeBron yesterday on McAfee. Did LeBron look good in his 90-minute interview with Pat McAfee? How did he come off, you think, to most people?
Well, first of all, how you doing, Jonathan? I'm wearing a Heat Culture jersey right now.
Beautiful.
Throwback to, get things started. I mean, it's great for Pat McAfee to get LeBron for 90 minutes. Who wouldn't like to have LeBron for 90 minutes to talk about a lot of things? But come on, we all know what this was about. He wanted to stick it to Stephen A. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I wish he can get through it without all the profanity. You could say, "Oh, you're old. What are you, a prune?" I just didn't like that part of it. And I wish they had maybe touched on some other topics. I didn't like the stuff that he said about Brian Windhorst. I thought that was a little unfair. And the thing that really struck me, and you could say, oh, he was kind of joking around about it. Here you do have one of the greatest players in the history of the sport, a guy that apparently wants to own a team one day. And didn't he kind of accuse the league of rigging it? So he ended up in Cleveland, and Patrick Ewing ended up in New York, and Derrick Rose ended up with the Chicago Bulls, and this was all under the stewardship of David Stern. And if David Stern was around when you ever brought up something like that, he would bite your head off. So I thought that was a really odd thing, a road for him to go down, especially since he's still an active player in the league and apparently wants to own an NBA team one day.
I thought it's an example, I believe, of some of these players, and in this case, it's LeBron, really having no clue how things work. When LeBron says when the ball dropped and it came up Cavaliers.
Yeah, the ball, you're right. He said the ball drop. It's not a ball drop.
LeBron, there's 1,000 different combinations, and they draw the ball 4 different times to come up with the combination, and there's a law firm that oversees the entire process. So I kind of feel like everything's on the up and up.
Yeah, and to your point, it's actually 14 ping pong balls, and 4 of them are drawn up. And like you mentioned, all the different combinations. I think it's 1,001, not Dalmatians, but combinations that they have to win the lottery. So I think that's him going down this path of trying to be somewhat funny and be loose and be with the guys. But you're an active NBA player, and come on, he has to know what his place in NBA history is, what his place is today in the NBA, and to say something like that, it's out of line. It's not Gilbert Arenas on his podcast joking around. You're an active NBA player, and you're accusing the league of rigging 3 lotteries to send 2 local guys home, LeBron and Derrick Rose, and then give Patrick Ewing to the New York Knicks. I thought that part of it. If I'm at the league office, you cannot be happy about those comments.
Well, and look, we joke about who's the face of the league. This guy's the face of the league.
Yep.
And he's getting out in front there talking about their shenanigans. I didn't like, for a guy who is an unbelievably smart player, and he does know the history of the game, I thought it was very strange, his comments about Giannis, essentially what today's player would do back in the day. Frank, there was no three-point line back then in the 70s. Everyone is crowding the paint. Giannis, unless all of a sudden he built up a jumper, Giannis would have an extremely difficult time getting to the basket in the 70s.
Yeah, and you're referring to when he said, well, if Giannis played in the 70s, I could see him scoring 250 points in a game. Of course, he's exaggerating, but it's also, first, number one, no one is saying that the best players in today's NBA couldn't play in the 70s. So it's kind of a straw man argument. Has anyone come around saying Giannis would never be able to make it in the 70s? No. LeBron wouldn't be able to make it. I really think this was more about LeBron saying Giannis would score 250. And as all you guys know, when it comes to the GOAT debate, no one is calling Giannis maybe the greatest player of all time. They're saying that about me. So if Giannis could score 250 in a game, how much do you think I could score?
500.
And then in the same breath, he kind of is lecturing the ex-players that are in the media and do podcasts or on TV, and also the media that didn't play in the NBA that covers the league, always reprimanding them to stop being so critical of the players today. You should, celebrate the players today. So he's saying that, yet he's wiping out an entire decade of players, which, oh, by the way, includes Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who in the 70s was the leading scorer in the 70s, and whose scoring record, LeBron ended up breaking, and Kareem is a Laker legend. So I think he unintentionally and didn't realize what he was doing. But I think that's in that setting, he's trying to come across as one of the guys. And I think in a way he's trying really hard to say something profound and compelling. And I think in some cases he ends up putting his foot in his mouth.
How different would your job be if you were covering an NBA beat today as opposed to, 25 years ago?
I'd like to think that I would still do the same thing because I still covered it before social media and then during social media. But I do think today there's more of response from the players. Like Kevin Durant is big at it. Obviously, LeBron is, where if you're critical of the players, they have a forum and a platform to go back at you, and they're going to have an army of supporters that are going to agree with the players. And I think a perfect example was, LeBron going after Brian Windhorst, which was unfair. I once wrote a trade thing with the Knicks and Cleveland that LeBron was pushing for. And when the reporters asked him about it, he said, that story's trash, that the reporter is trash. So he came after me. I'm not writing that story about the trade unless I had it on good, had a number of sources telling me that. But when he calls me trash, what am I supposed to do in that point? Start yelling, standing on a mountaintop and say, no, I'm not trash. I'm actually a really good reporter. What I do, you're fighting a losing battle. And I think that's why you see with Brian Windhorst, what response is he going to have when LeBron goes after him like that? He's bullying him. Brian Windhorst is a big boy, so he's not going to get too upset about it. In the long run, LeBron may have thought he won the little battle there, but I think ultimately people look at that and they know that it's a little unfair, and it comes across as a bully in the whole thing.
I was stunned. Someone sent me the clip yesterday on Brian Windhorst, and I wrote back, I go, there's no way this is real. It has to be AI edited. I didn't believe it.
Yeah. It's funny too. So I got to know Brian when he was a beat reporter, and we became pretty close enough that when Cleveland was in town once, I mean, this is years ago, and Brian was a big Sopranos fan. So I drove him around my town where a lot of the scenes were filmed, including the final scene that was filmed at Holston's Ice Cream. That's when they're sitting in that booth. Yeah. A couple of other places, like I showed him around town. And we all knew that Brian had known LeBron from back in his high school days. And he had covered him. I think he even covered him when he played football. He would talk about that, but never once did Brian say, LeBron and I are really tight. In fact, I'm going to text him now. And he never would unsolicited start bringing up a story. I was talking with LeBron the other day. He called me up, or I called him. He never made it seem like that was their relationship at all. It was one of those things where he was lucky. He got to cover a guy in high school that become one of the biggest sports stars in the history of this country. So he had a background with him. I covered high school sports in New York. So I knew of Jamal Mashburn, for example, when he was just a young kid. Same thing with Stephon Marbury. With my luck, neither of them turned out to be one of the greatest players of all time. But you do have a relationship with them that's a little bit different than someone that comes in and covers them and meets them for the first time when they're in the NBA. And that was the one advantage that Brian had. He didn't walk around saying that he was friends with LeBron James, like LeBron said yesterday.
I know it's a code of honor, or at least it's supposed to be, when you're in the print business and you write something, especially if you write a column, where you're giving your opinion and you write something negative about the player, you should be showing your face in the locker room the very next day. Did you ever go through anything like that where you wrote something super critical and you were nervous about going into, presumably the Knicks locker room the next day?
Well, yeah, you always know that there's a chance that something like that could happen. So you're going to be a little anxious. I remember covering the Mets. That was one of my first beats. This was before I did the Knicks, and I wrote something about Jeff Kent, and I believe the back page headline. A lot of times you would have to take the brunt from the players and the organization over the headlines, and I would never really go down the road if I didn't write the headline. I'm representing the paper there, so I guess I have to take it. But the back page headline was Jeff Can't instead of Jeff Kent, because he was struggling to play.
And he was not a nice guy either.
No. He came. But to his credit, he confronted me outside the locker room. He said a bunch of derogatory things, which you would definitely get canceled for today. Like, I didn't go complain to my editor. I didn't go talk to anybody with the Mets or anything like that. You just kind of sit there and take it. But, there were always sometimes a lot of those unpleasant interactions, but it's all right. Like, I think the way LeBron handled the Stephen A. Smith thing, which was really odd, that's never happened because that's happening during a game in between the third and the fourth quarter. The other caveat here is that Stephen A. is rich enough where he's affording courtside seats.
Right.
But a player was never going to walk by the table when we sat courtside. Maybe they give you a dirty look, but they weren't going to kind of have it out with you in that moment. That's not really the setting for it. So LeBron, when he had it out with Stephen A., Steve did the right thing where you're just kind of standing there and take it because there's a small window there because the game's eventually going to start. So LeBron really didn't want a dialogue because he easily could have said to Stephen A., I need to talk to you after the game. Would you mind coming back toward the locker room? And
he wanted everyone to see him dressing down.
Which is it. Listen, LeBron is the most celebrated athlete, but he's also the most criticized athlete over the last 20 years. He gets it from both ways. So none of us have walked in his shoes. So who knows what that's like? I could be sensitive to criticism as well. But I think as a 40-year-old guy, I think he should have said to Stephen A., I want to talk to you after the game. And if he wants to have at it and really, if he gets emotional, he gets loud, Steve's just going to have to put up with it. But it also gives Steve a chance to kind of tell his side, where LeBron didn't want to hear Stephen A's side at that point. He wanted it to be, like you said, he's almost performing. I'm going to reprimand this guy in front of everybody. I know he's really not going to go back at me because he's kind of stunned that I'm doing it in this moment. And oh, by the way, the referee's about to blow the whistle because the fourth quarter is about to start.
Gotta go.
Exactly.
Frank, a couple nights ago, huge story down here, obviously, and the game was on TNT. Jimmy Butler makes his return here. What were your thoughts on the performance, not just from the Warriors, who, said, we got Jimmy's back. We're here for him. And Jimmy Butler, who put up the type of performance that you would have thought he was still in a Heat uniform this year. I mean, he was barely trying out there.
Yeah, it's a couple of things. Number one, I give the Miami Heat a lot of credit since, Jimmy Butler was a hostage taker and he held the franchise ransom and they gave him a video tribute, which is a little wacky, but I get why they do it. They want to take the high road and everything.
Well, did you notice the Heat pulled a move there with that? Okay.
No sound.
Well, I don't know if that was a malfunction or what, but normally, and I've been there for these tribute videos, I was on their broadcast for 12 years. That video normally comes during a timeout in the first quarter. They played that video at 7:29 p.m. when they knew the building was still going to be empty.
Yeah. So I think, and then they accomplished their goal that they did play the video, and he can't complain about anything like that. Not that he would have a right to complain. I think that he did probably realize at some point that his reputation has taken a bit of a hit. I don't know how anyone could condone his actions. It's funny, after he got traded, I was on a couple of the San Francisco radio stations and they asked me, you think it'll end badly? I said, well, hang on a second. It ended badly in Chicago, Minnesota, maybe not so much Philly because that was kind of quick, but certainly in Miami. So he's going to play well, but it likely, if you're judging it by history, it's going to end badly. And the only reason it ended badly in Miami is because Miami wouldn't pay him. And his demands were kind of outrageous. He could have opted into a contract for next season at about $50 million.
Yeah.
He was worried about the following season. Well, hang on a second.
What about years 4, 5, 6?
Yeah, look what you've done the last couple of years. You haven't done anything. So it was all about money. It had nothing to do with, Pat Riley, he better not say anything to me, and look at the team they're putting around me. If they had given him a 3-year extension, he still would have been there. So Miami made a business decision that they had to make. And what did he do? When he found out he wasn't going to be starting, he left practice. That's a mature thing to do. There's no defending those actions from Jimmy Butler.
You know what I thought was the most telling part of the night, Frank? Before the game and after the game, these NBA players today, it's hugging and kissing. I mean, heck, even after the Knicks and the Warriors and Draymond Green, how disrespectful he was to Karl Anthony Towns, the entire team is going up there and yucking it up with Draymond after the game. Jimmy bolted right to the locker room after the game. I think it was a telltale sign of the relationship and the way the relationship ended between Jimmy and his former teammates.
Yeah, and I think ultimately, and the players will say this a lot, I don't want to get involved in anybody's business, but again, the guy had a contract for next year. So I think that they feel like he sabotaged their season, and deep down he knows that. For all the tough guy stuff that these players do, he knows that he did that, and he probably didn't want any type of awkward confrontation there. Plus, he didn't play well. Plus, the team got blown out. Now, if they had won the game by 30, let's say they won the game realistically by 15 points, and he went for 35 in the game, there's a chance he might be standing there and waiting for guys to kind of, come to him. Since I'm the conquering hero, I came back to Miami and I slayed the giant. No, that didn't happen. He didn't play well. I know he shook hands with those two guys sitting baseline. Then he walked off the court. The worst thing that happened to him was that Steph Curry didn't play in the game, because it makes a big difference when Steph Curry's out there.
Unfair criticism these days of Riley?
Oh, come on. Give me a break. It's so, it's not the Miami Heat's birthright to be a contending team every year. It's hard. Players get older. Not everyone makes the perfect moves. I'll still take Pat Riley running my team. Things didn't work out. The Damian Lillard thing, which you could make the case it hasn't really worked out for Milwaukee either. The team that it worked out for was Boston, them getting Drew Holiday. I'm sure Miami would have liked to have gotten Drew Holiday. But you're allowed to have down years. I'm going to judge a guy over the body of work and what he's done. The job that he's done down there in Miami is one of the most remarkable jobs ever, because you know what Miami was back in the day before Pat Riley showed up. It was a great place to go twice a year, because you were going to, chances are you're going to win the games. You get the beautiful weather. No one looked at the Miami Heat as like a legitimate contending franchise that, was in play for players and was run really well. So I've always been a huge Pat Riley fan, so I'm not going to go down that road. And for Lou Williams to say the things that he said, hey, players get old and they have to move on, so why shouldn't Pat Riley have to move on? Stop.
I mean, they were in the finals 2 seasons ago. What are we talking about here? It's one down year. Can we give him the benefit of the doubt to fix it in one off season? I got 2 more quick things for you here, Frank. You're a Maryland guy. I'm a Florida guy. How invested are you in the game tonight?
It's weird about Florida's, by the way, is excellent. What a team they got. That coach there has done a really good job. The 2 guys on Maryland, Derek Queen, who hit the big shot to win the game the other night against Colorado State. And then for people who don't know, Angel Reese's brother is on Maryland, Julian Reese. And if you look at him, he looks like her. He's much more low key.
Unapologetically Julian.
Yeah, he looks very good. He also shoots left-handed. It's kind of like the same body type. And he did really well for them in the game against Colorado State. But I think Florida's a little tougher. And it's sickening with college basketball. The players are on the move during the tournament. And then Kevin Willard, can a day go by that the guy doesn't basically talk about that he could be leaving Maryland? It looks like he might end up at Villanova. It's a little much. So I have a funny feeling. I think Florida might win in a romp.
Finally, most importantly here, Frank, later next month, Pearl Jam. They are touring. Are you catching one of the shows?
I think I actually might go to Atlanta and Nashville to see it.
Okay.
Are they coming down to Florida?
They're playing 2 shows 10 minutes from where I live.
Are you going to go?
So, yeah, I'm going to go to both those shows. I go with my older son to every show now. I'm going to both those shows, and I already have tickets to one of the Atlanta shows.
Oh, nice. So maybe we'll run into each other. I told you about the time I saw them at the Apollo Theater.
Yeah.
It was a Sirius XM thing, and somehow, usually when I call them up about stuff, they first say, "Who the heck are you?" And then usually followed with, "No, that's not going to happen." But I actually went with my wife, and it was really cool. I'd driven by the Apollo, I'd never been inside, so that part of it was cool. Yeah. And it was a really good performance. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. Plus, I do the net games on Yes, and I don't know if you heard or not, but the Nets, their season will be over on the final day of the regular season. They're not going to be going to the playoffs, so I'm going to be off at those times. Well, I'll have nights off at that time, I should say.
I mean, you're doing 1, 2, 3 Cancun the beginning of your broadcast too.
Hey, I know this. When I first started covering the Knicks, and, every year, getting to the second round, they'd get to a conference finals. They'd go into the NBA finals in 99. It was always like, the regular season ends, the playoffs start, your workload increases double, and you never have a day off. Then all of a sudden, when guys got traded off, guys got older, that first year they didn't make the playoffs, and it was April 15th. I wasn't saying, oh, it stinks, it's April 15th, it's tax day. I was like, wow, this isn't too bad. And I'm telling you, there are some NBA players that play on bad teams. You cannot tell me that they don't appreciate getting off in April. Let's think about this. May, June, July, August, September. That's 5 months off. That's why I love Jakob Poeltl for Toronto. was sat out the other day. They listed as rest. Rest. He's going to be resting the next 5 months. What is he ramping up to rest? Give me a break.
Great job as always, Frank. Appreciate you stopping by. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Jonathan. See you soon.